Yeah, holy crap, that's some inflation, kids. That's the real deal right there. What the CPI is showing, 8.5%. 8.5% in March. Holy cow. And now the issue here is not that it's this high. I mean, oddly enough, that's not the issue. The issue, as Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis, put it, is that it's actually higher. Welcome, everybody, to the Morning Rumble. What is going on? Presented by Americans for Prosperity. .org. Love what they do. Make sure you get yourself over to rumble.com, rumble.com/Tony Katz, and you subscribe and you do all the things. It's very, very cool. I spoke with Matt Will. He's an economist at the University of Indianapolis, and he is honest to a freaking fault, is Dr. Matt Will. And breaking down what it is that we're seeing in this report with consumer pricing and how it all kind of breaks down across the strata. It's frightening stuff, because it's worse than you think. It's much worse than you think. So let me share this with you. I'm trying a new system. This is Dr. Matt Will, economist, University of Indianapolis, describing the problem. Things first, am I reading it right? And are we reading it right when we see consumer price index? I think that's what they're calling it, 8.5%. This is year over year. This is the inflation rate, correct?
Yes and no. Yes, that is the last 12 months. But Tony, if you look at just March, and I think everyone in your audience knows how to annualize something, multiply it by 12. So if you take just the March number and you multiply it by 12, that's 14.4%. We haven't seen that high of inflation since 1981, Tony. This is an outrageous number. Forget the sticker shock of 8.5, which is the preceding 12. That includes some low months. Just look at this last month, 14.4%, Tony. Everyone in this country got a 14.4% pay cut today.
Now, we understand the 14.4% pay cut as the idea that your dollar is worth less. Inflation going up, as inflation as you've described it, is the idea that you have too much cash and not enough stuff. Inflation is your dollar being worth less than it was. So even when we see real wages going up, the inflation rate beating that, your money is still worth less. But it doesn't work out that way to a 14% pay cut. Is it actual percentage to dollar?
It is, Tony, because when you go to the store and you pay more in this month, you're going to pay 1.2% more for everything you buy. That's just 1 month out of 12, Tony. If that happens every month for the year, you just got a 14% pay cut. And Tony, it's not a pay cut. It's more of a tax, because the people who control inflation is the government. Yes, there's contribution from Putin, there's contribution from the pandemic, but the federal government, the Federal Reserve Board, and the federal government spending money, they can pull back the supply of cash. The stuff is out of their control in large part, but the cash is not, and they could pull that back. They have given you a tax increase.
You have been from the very beginning very, very clear-eyed about the idea that what we're seeing from out of Ukraine and from Russia is only a piece of a larger puzzle. From the very beginning, you've been very on top of the idea, Doctor, that this is Biden policy much more than it is Russian invasion of Ukraine. You still hold to that?
I do, because, Tony, we keep saying there's two parts. There's cash and there's stuff. And you just said it. The stuff is declining because of the pandemic, because of the war. But the cash is still in control of the government. But they're afraid, Tony, they're afraid to fix the problem because it will cause a recession. If they cut their spending, which will reduce the cash, if they reduce the money supply, which will reduce the cash, by definition, it will cause a recession, Tony, because the definition of recession, 2 quarters in a row of decline in GDP. GDP is a formula, Tony. Included in the formula is government spending. They know it, to fix the problem will cause a recession, and they're putting it off, and they're putting it off, and they're putting it off, maybe until after the election, Tony, but they're putting it off on purpose, and that's going to get bigger and worse.
You're making the argument that it's a calculation on the point of the Biden administration, not to reduce spending, because reduced spending brings us the recession, and because that gets added into the formula. You believe that it's absolutely political, that the spending is the key. Reducing the spending will help bring down the inflation, and they won't do it because they're trying to do anything in terms of the Biden administration to hold on to some levels of acceptability in the House and the Senate.
Tony, okay, maybe it's not political. Maybe they're just not that bright. But everybody that took economics in the first day of their first course, they knew this, Tony. Inflation's you can talk to, go to big jumbo university economists who are very liberal. They'll tell you the same thing. The Federal Reserve Board, in combination with the federal spending policy, causes inflation. Now, they may be focusing on the Federal Reserve Board because maybe there are some economists out there who love government spending. But the reality is those entities are the ones that cause it, and they can eliminate it tomorrow, but it's going to be painful.
I want to take a look at this right here. This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? And this is the report that just came out. And this chart right here on top, sir, which might be a little small for some to see, the blue line is all items. The red line is all items less food and energy. So you see that the all items is the 8.5%, which I understand your argument, sir, that you're arguing that it's higher. The all items less food and energy is 5.5%. Is there something in that we're supposed to say, well, there's a silver lining there, or is it all as bad as we think it is?
Well, okay, if you want a silver lining, for 2 months in a row now, the cost of new or used cars and trucks has declined. So after a 35% increase, Tony, we've seen a 35% increase in used cars and trucks. We finally see 2 months of decline. So I guess that's the silver lining.
I will tell you that I spend a lot of time staring at luxury goods, and I have seen luxury good prices. For example, watch markets, right? Men's watches, luxury watches. I've been looking at vehicles. I have seen those things come down. And the only thing that I've been able to come to in that argument is that, man, people really need the cash, or they're worried. So they're getting rid of the thing that they thought of as an investment, figuring there was a high coming, and they were taking the cash. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're correct, Tony, but there's even more to the story. What you're seeing is inflation is primarily a middle-class phenomenon. Wealthy people can afford the inflation more than people in the middle class. But what you're seeing on luxury goods, Tony, is it's starting to creep in to higher levels of income now. Everybody's starting to see the impact. Everyone.
So now let's take it back to this, what we have right here, this chart here from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we take a look at certain things, food at home and food away from home, and how these things are calculated. And it goes down this whole list right here. The food index increased 1% in March, as the food at home index increased 1.5% over the month. I guess the question is, as I go through this reporting, sir, is there something here? It just came out this morning. You've only had a little bit of time to look at it. Is there something here that jumps out at you and says, oh, this is the problem?
No, everything,
or the indicator of something worse, even. Maybe that's what I meant. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah, the data doesn't show me anything that we didn't already know. What we're noticing is that the government can't hide anymore. So they're coming up with more and more excuses. So now Putin's the culprit. Putin wasn't the culprit 12 months ago when it was transitory. He wasn't the culprit even last month when they said he was the problem, but the war hadn't even started yet. The sanctions weren't even in place yet. So now he's the culprit for inflation that instantly happened. Well, Tony, it didn't instantly happen. It's been coming up all along. Now, you ask in the report, is there anything? Well, yes. If you look at the 1.5%, which is just 1 month, multiply it by 12, and you're going to get 18% inflation for food at home. Again, a large part of that is because of the war, because of the wheat that's coming out of the Ukraine, or not coming out of the Ukraine at the moment, right, and not coming out of Russia. We're okay in the U.S. Think of the wheat prices across the globe. I was looking at, just out of the blue, I was looking at prices in Egypt, where they get almost all of their wheat from the Ukraine and from Russia. They've seen a quadrupling of prices in things like bread. We don't see that here. We're seeing 18% increase. That's nothing compared to what's happening in the rest of the world.
But it's still a whole lot of something. It's still
Yes.
not a whole lot of something. We've been hearing a little bit of action from the Fed before I know you're up against it. I gotta let you go. We've been hearing a whole bunch from the Fed and supposedly the doves. Feel the air quotes. The doves on the Fed now talking about the fact that the inflation hurts the poor the most, and therefore we have to do something. And so they were already talking about 7 rate hikes. They did the first one at 0.25%. So you can argue that we're going to see at least 1.75% increase in that interest rate. They're now talking about 0.5% at the regular click. 2022 is over. How much has the interest rate gone up in 2022, in your view?
Oh, that, you know what?
That's
Not
right.
enough.
It's prognostication. I want you to do it.
I know.
Look
but
into the crystal ball.
my answer will be not enough, because
you're a frightening man sometimes.
well, but it's true, because they can stop inflation if they would just do it and stop talking about it. Stop spending, increase the Fed funds rate. They should have done 0.5% before. They should be doing 0.5% next time, and it should be 0.5% every time until they get this under control. In 1981, Tony, we had a massive recession. It was a necessary outcome to bad economic policy. Until that happens here, we're going to have bad times, and they need to face the music sooner rather than later, because if they put it off, it'll be worse. And I believe they're putting it off for political reasons.
That is Dr. Matt Will, economist with the University of Indianapolis, and you never paint a rosy picture.
I do. It's just when it's warranted. Hey,
Yes,
used car prices are down. That's a good thing.
You should never ever write children's books. Never should you tell bedtime stories. Never once. I was not wrong about that. Sorry about that. He should never tell bedtime stories, should Dr. Matt Will. So we have clearly this understanding that the picture is far worse than they want to paint. And yet we're going to have people still tell you about how valuable the American Rescue Plan has been. In my Indiana, that happens all the time from the Indiana Democratic Party. It's laughable. The reality is this is rough. And this doesn't get good. And there is no spinning it to something valuable. And there is no way of saying, well, actually, no. That used car prices are down. Fantastic. Can you afford the gas that goes in the car? I've seen gas prices go down right here in Indiana to under $4 a gallon. That's today. What's it going to be 2 weeks from now? We're already hearing about the jet fuel increases. Best of luck going on vacation. Am I the only one who canceled a vacation? Oh, yeah, I did. Absolutely did cancel a vacation. Can't afford. Send the whole family, fly out, rent the car. And will the rental car be there? Affording gas for that car, because we do a lot of driving on a vacation. Will there be people working in the hotels because they're having staffing issues everywhere? Never mind, will you be able to get on the flight? I watched what happened this spring break with all the cancellations and people who got delayed and lost days of vacation. Nope. No, not going to have any part of it. Not going to be around it. Let me go to the comments here. Trucks and SUVs are still crazy expensive, even though gas is expensive. Not sure if it's related to chip shortages or transition to electrical. Well, so a couple things there. SUVs are expensive because that's really what people want. They don't want the little smart cars. They don't want that stuff. They don't want to be around that stuff in any way, shape, or form. The chips are keeping trucks from getting to market. That much is true. It's keeping so many new cars from getting to market. So what is at the market is, of course, more expensive as well. So there's a want for a specific type of vehicle, and then there's the chip shortage on top of that. So you've got the 1-2 punch. I fear, hey, Susan, how are you? I fear of U.S. senior citizens on fixed incomes who are already struggling are going to start looking at alternative food sources. Well, let's not joke about people eating dog food. I don't want to do that. But even the Fed has started to say, because they usually don't talk like this, we have to do something about inflation because the poor people are being affected. Well, yes. If you're rich and there's a lot of inflation, you can still handle the basic things. If there's poor and a lot of inflation, you can't. That we understand that as an economic reality there. Yes, if you're on a fixed income, you have a certain amount of dollars coming in per month. This is a real issue. And when people don't have savings, these things get far worse. And so some of that, I will say, I go back to personal responsibility. What is it that you were spending on? What is it that you valued? You have all these people in government who believe that the answer is more spending, more spending, more spending. You got to spend your way to prosperity. You got to prime the pump. Very John Maynard Keynes, Keynesian economic theory. No, you have to have savings because that's the capital that you can then unleash for either investment or in times like this. How are you going to engage more spending? More spending in this case is more borrowing. The government really wants to do more borrowing, putting more money into the system, which keeps inflation high, as I was discussing with Dr. Will. Real issues that come from an administration that doesn't know anything about economic policy. They don't know anything about anything. And they're kind of proud of it. They're kind of proud of the fact that they don't have an answer. They don't have a clue. According to Connie, wine is more expensive. Now we can panic. Cigars and bourbon. And you guys know that I am a cigar guy, right? Andy said bourbon cigars have gotten a little more expensive. I haven't seen it so much in bourbon, but I would argue that the bourbon issue is not about inflation as much as it is about supply, because bourbon has become so incredibly popular, especially during COVID, that it's just not there, and you can't rush the creation of bourbon. X number of years in the barrel, right? If you're going to have a straight bourbon. And so then add more years if you want to be able to put an age statement or not put an age statement to the bourbon itself. There are rules about these things, right? You can't just decide you're going to flip a switch and make bourbon. That's not how it works if it's going to be anything worth its damn salt, and there are rules that have to be followed. So the massive amounts of buying that took place with bourbon have now created a situation by which there's less bourbon and it's more expensive, right? We're seeing some of this. So I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about buying barrels, right? What if you want to buy a barrel for yourself and put your own label on it, if you will? What about that? You can't find those barrels. Those barrels are going for thousands, plural, more than they were, making it, of course, untenable. So don't apply bourbon in the main to inflation. Cigars is a little more supply chain issue than inflation, because you got to get the cigars to the United States. They don't have the boxes. They don't have the cellophane sometimes that the cigar goes in for a little more protection. Cigar glue, which is for when you're wrapping the cigar and keeping everything together. There are certain crop issues that have gone on. I think there's a question right now about Ecuadorian broadleaf, which I love, and what that might mean to certain cigar types and therefore certain cigar blends. So there are reasons for other things to be happening. But cigar, more than bourbon, is a supply chain issue, even more than an inflation issue. One of the places that you could discuss inflation in bourbon going up is the actual glass bottle, because it's hard to find glass bottles. That's a place that has gotten more expensive and has caused some prices to go up. That much is true. Sharon spent $110 for food for her sister as a shut-in, microwavable item. $180 for the same items that today, $70. $70. And you do that once a week, once a month, once every 2 weeks. I'm just trying to figure out if you've got a $70 increase or you have a $280 increase if it's every week at that that rate. And no, it's not all Putin and ghost guns, Jonathan. The ghost gun. I'm actually doing a whole thing on the radio show today. Stephen Kotowski of The Reload is going to be with me. So you should join in at WIBC.com and you can listen to the show there. And then we have got the chat open on Locals, TonyKatz.locals.com for subscribers. You can be a part of the chat. It's very, very, very cool. But no, it's not ghost guns. Ghost gun. Does anyone know what a ghost gun is? A ghost gun is what they call a gun that you build yourself, and it doesn't have a serial number, which is absolutely legal in the United States of America. But to make it sound scary, they say ghost gun. They make it say a ghost gun. I don't smoke baccarats. I got nothing against them. It's just not my It's just not my cigar. So once a month, thank you, Sharon. So you're up $70. So that'll be $840. You're up $1,000 if you will, if I round. You're up $840 for the year. And that's right now. That's not where things may be going. Guys, I am up against the time. Can I tell you I'm having a weird thing? Check out my background. It's like going in and out of focus. My camera usually never has that problem. But it's been happening a lot. Like, look at that. It's freaking me out. I don't know. I maybe I need a new camera. I mean, I haven't had this one. I've had this one for like 3 years. It's solid TV camera too, but it's something. I either need to have a better autofocus or I need something that I can focus it in here. That's the story. Oh, I look fine. Thank you. According to Connie, I look fine. Thank you, Connie. Thank you. So yes, that's why I got the glasses. I don't need them to read. My thanks to Americans for Prosperity, because without them, we don't get to do this show. It's breathing, Penny. That's just weird right there. But my thanks to Americans for Prosperity. I greatly appreciate you letting us do this. AmericansForProsperity.org. Check them out for yourselves. Get into the idea of economic liberty and personal responsibility and free speech and, cool stuff like that. I'll catch you tomorrow, everyone. You take care. TonyKatz.locals.com. Join, become a subscriber, and get in on the chat today for the show. We'll catch you later.